Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tim Fletcher. I'm a Senior Director of Solutions Marketing at Snowflake. And today we're going to talk about how Snowflake and Tableau help power marketing analytics for your organization. So there's three elements to this discussion. The first one we're going to talk about is, why does data matter to marketing? So what's the imperative? Why is this an important topic? Why should you care about this? The second thing we're going to talk about is, what's a good data strategy for marketing? And what have we seen across our customer base in terms of people being successful? And what are some of the mistakes that we've seen people make as well? And third, what's the best foundation for a data strategy for marketing, that customer 360, and how does Tableau and Snowflake actually help me with that? So the first thing we're going to talk about is, why does data matter to marketing? And there's really three reasons that we're going to talk through. The first one is really that the experts say so. So pretty much every publication out there in the last 5 years has had some cover page where they've said that data is the world's most valuable resource, and that data is the new product for companies, and data is transforming industries. And though this is hyperbole, to some extent this is true. And I think as marketers, we've actually known about this for a while. In marketing, data has been the lifeblood of segmentation and targeting and informing decisions. And I think the marketers show that there's actually a long way for us to go. So two interesting statistics here. The first one is that 87% of marketers consider data their organization's most underutilized asset. And I think that just shows the thirst for data to inform marketing decisions, to inform the customer experience that our customers receive from each of us. And the second stat is that spending on data-driven marketing is still estimated to be about 20% of all the spend that's out there. And so there's just a tremendous opportunity to continue to use data to drive marketing decisions. And one of the reasons for that is that marketing sits so close to revenue. So CMOs out there are often responsible for the revenue of their business. They're one of the most important drivers of the profitability and of the revenue of the business. And so we could say that the IT initiatives and the analytics teams that are supporting that should be thought of as part of that revenue center. If you have an IT project that's going to drive up marketing performance, that's going to increase the revenue of the business, that is a revenue center that is creating that opportunity for you. And we need to think about the opportunities to spend on leveraging data to increase marketing performance as something that is backed by revenue, because it's a better customer experience, it's better targeting, it's better acquisition, it's better decisions that are based on data that sits behind that. So if the experts say so is the first reason. The second reason is purely financial. So if you look at the budget of a company, the marketing line item on that, if you look at that top row for consumer packaged goods, is 24% of that whole company's expenditure is on marketing. And so if you can drive better performance against that line item, if you can make it 1% more effective, or if you can spend that same amount, but make it more effective at generating revenue from that spend, that creates a massive impact on the business. So CFOs care very much about the performance of marketing and how your organization can use data to drive up that performance or to drive more efficiency in this budget item. So if the first case was the experts all know that this is important, the second is the CFO, and for a financial reason, this should be important to your company. The third one is a little more strategic or even existential, that the marketing model for a given era really determines what companies are going to win and what companies are going to lose. And so it's very important that you understand the marketing model of your time. And lo and behold, data is very critical to the marketing era that we're in right now. So if you think back to the 1960s, 1970s, this Mad Men era, the dominant way to market to customers was through TV and print advertising. And that was a one-size-fits-all delivery model for that marketing. And so it was these TV advertisements that went into the home and everyone in America. And what that meant was, it was very simple products with very simple messages ended up becoming household names. And that's probably how that term came to be, that this is a household name. And that meant that when people would go out to buy products, those would be top of mind, and that's how those large CPG companies gained share, and that's how those retailers ultimately gained share as well. And what we saw in that era was this consolidation of the CPG companies and of those retailers, because once those CPG companies were big enough, they were the ones that could afford to buy those expensive TV spots. And once they bought those TV spots, they became the ones that were the household names. And so it was this self-reinforcing cycle that was built. And those companies won because of the marketing model of that era. If you fast forward to the 2000s and 2010s, we had a different era that was happening. And so the change that happened here was that there were many new lower cost ways to reach customers. And this was really the heyday of CRM marketing. And the people that have done well, of course, Amazon is probably the best, because during this whole era, pretty much every retailer that you purchase something from started to offer you the chance to create an account and start to join this loyalty program that we have for you, and to download the app. And there were all sorts of new ways to reach customers in a low-cost way that meant that once you acquired a customer, you had the opportunity in a very efficient way to try to upsell them and cross-sell them to different products. And so the successful companies were the ones that did that best by expanding their product portfolios, and through acquisition, expanding the brands in which they could migrate customers through to get a greater share of wallet and greater share of categories. And no one's done that better than Amazon, both from a loyalty perspective with Prime, but also in terms of the category expansion and how they've expanded their share of wallet for the customers that go to them. And in the era that we're in right now, it's really all about those one-to-one experiences and ads. And that's changed who to play, how you can play in a given market and who's winning in a given market. SoFi is a good example of this, because they decided to relook at how you price student loan risk and expand that to other types of loan products based upon data about a given applicant. And because they were able to take that data and price that risk differently, they were beating people and gaining share from those traditional banks that would evaluate people without the benefit of all of that data. And so the two types of companies that are benefiting from this era where all of this data is available are, one, the data disruptors who are using data to drive an advantage, like SoFi. And another example of this is Netflix. At the beginning of this decade, Netflix was a massive and successful company, but today it is an even bigger and tremendous success, and they've fundamentally changed what their product is, and it's now almost entirely based upon data. And the second type of company that's really winning in this era are the direct-to-consumer companies who are going after a more niche audience. And it's almost the opposite of what we saw in that Mad Men era, where it was one-size-fits-all marketing. Now with Facebook and Instagram and other digital ways of reaching people, you can get extremely targeted, and you can reach a niche audience in a way that just wasn't economical before. And so a lot of companies are able to go direct consumer and to build an entire business where they weren't able to previously. So a lot more niche products have an effective way to go to market that weren't able to before. So the important thing for your company is to figure out, given the era that we're in, can determine who's going to be successful and who's not going to be successful. How is it that you're using the marketing model of your time, and how are you using data to either be one of these disruptors or to drive that efficiency in your acquisition and your retention marketing? So that's why it's important. It's important financially. It's important because the experts say it's important for us, and it's important just because strategically it's good for your business to focus on data. What's a good data strategy for marketing? I think to answer this question, we're going to actually share some answers to the opposite question, which is, what's a bad data strategy? And we'll share a few examples based upon what we've seen just from organizations that I've been a part of, and frankly, strategies that I should be responsible for. But we've all learned from these mistakes. The first one is, well, we don't have a strategy. If you find that there's not a coherent organization of data, and there's not a coherent way in which analytics is spread across the business, and it's not clear who's responsible and who's driving it, then you could be in an organization where you just don't have a data strategy. The second one is perhaps more common, where you have a few heroes that really get this data out for you. But in order to get data to drive decisions or to support an initiative, you really have to go and get that person's time, and you need to submit something in a Jira ticket, or you have to be friends with that person, but ultimately they will deliver for you. They will be a hero, but it's heroic because it's not something that everybody can do. And that of course is the problem. The third type, we've seen more recently over the last 5 years, of companies that know they need to upgrade their data capabilities, but that jump far ahead and go straight to data science and go all in on data science. And so instead of those few data analyst heroes, they've got a couple of data scientists that are doing some really sophisticated things. But when it comes to the bread and butter of operational reporting or supporting ad hoc analytics for the 100% of your business that needs data to make decisions, you end up feeling like the capabilities that you have aren't well matched with the needs that your organization has. And the final one is, we've all heard of data silos, but there's such a thing as analysis silos too, where you have different departments, each of which are creating their own sources of truth and reporting without a single agreed upon way of looking at data, of understanding what metrics matter to the business, how those metrics should be governed, and how we're going to report on them, leading to analysis silos where everybody's looking at slightly different data and trying to compare apples and oranges. So these are 4 types of problems that people have tried to drift their teams away from: the no strategy, having a few great data heroes, going all in on data scientists, or in the analysis silos. So if those are bad data strategies, what does a good data strategy look like? And the thing that to think about is that when you're imagining this future state, it can sometimes feel like such a big departure from where you are today. So you want to have data that's informing all of your team's decisions. You want to have a single place where all of your data about your customer journey is in a single place and it's all linked back together. You want to be able to use data to target the customer experience, and you want to have a data science team that's looking at that same data and is coming up with predictive lifetime value scores, propensity to buy scores that are making your campaigns and your customer experience better. But the current state you're in right now feels so far away from that. So how do you fix it when you don't feel like you have a great picture of your customer right now, that you're missing a lot of data sources from your customer 360? If you feel like you need a better understanding of actually what drives revenue across your campaigns, maybe you don't know how to attribute revenue across different campaign sources and are just looking at a channel by channel basis. Or maybe you can't connect data out to your campaigns right now. So you have a good sense of what's happening with your customer, but you're not really using it to drive better segmentation or personalization. The best thing that we've seen in our customer base is when organizations understand that their data strategy should resemble a maturity curve. It's okay to not be there today, but it's good to have and plan out how you're going to get those capabilities in the future. And most of the organizations that we work with do follow this type of maturity curve, where the most acute problem is fixing that customer 360 and building that first. And then you start to expand into having better ROI reporting and better attribution, which leads to a need to optimize campaigns because you understand what campaigns are working and which ones aren't. And finally, having one-to-one data products where you have a data science team that's looking at that customer 360 and finding opportunities to use machine learning or data science to drive further optimizations. So if that's what a strategy could look like, if a customer 360 is the foundation of it, how does Tableau and Snowflake actually help? There's really 3 ways in which we fit into this story. The first one is you need to build a list of data sources. So there are dozens of data sources out there that probably inform your customer journey. There's probably dozens of tools that you need to take account for. You need to find a way to put them into one place. So having a single system where all of this is linked and queryable. And then you need to make it accessible for every business user in the company. So talking about the first one first, how to build a list of data sources. What do we mean by this? If you look at the marketing technology landscape, this has exploded over the last 10 years. And there are now over 5,000 vendors that are out there selling to marketing. And it has been great in that marketers are able to buy, test, and deploy new tools that can make the customer journey even more effective and increase your ability to acquire and retain customers. The problem is that for each one of these logos, you're creating a data silo for yourself, because it's creating a pocket of data that's now out of reach of your customer, and you need to find a way to bring that into a single place. So although it's been great, the marketers have been able to buy all these tools, it's created a headache for us today, because now we have these dozens of tools, none of which have data that's linked together in a single place. And so that's the problem we have to go and fix, because all of this data, from the Salesforce data to your clickstream data to the data that's coming off of your digital media spend, isn't linked together. And you're not able to put that into a cohesive picture of your customer. When what you're looking for is a single customer profile in a single place where you have all of this information that's automatically linked and is identifiable together. This is the experience that you're trying to drive. So the first thing to do is to go get that data. And that's where we have a couple recommendations for you. The options on how to go get that data are first to build a solution and to ask your IT team to go and build connections to Salesforce, to Facebook, to these other tools, or to go buy an ETL solution that's going to help you out. On the build side of things, there's some important questions to ask. So who's going to build it? Who's responsible for QA? What's the agreement between marketing and the IT team that owns it about what happens when these things break? The short answer is this is critical for any of the homegrown production systems that you have, like for example, product data. You're going to need to have your IT team bring that into a solution like Snowflake for you so that your team can analyze it. On the other side, for as many of these sources as possible, we would recommend going for, and we see it most of our customers choose to do, is deploy an ETL solution that connects up to all those different data sources. And there's some questions to ask yourself there too, like what percentage of your data sources does this particular tool cover? Can I add a new source myself, or do I need to go through IT? And what's the pricing model that I'm going to have? But ultimately, with this combination of relying on your IT team to bring in some data sources and to deploying an ETL solution that has connectors up to Facebook and Salesforce and these other tools, you're going to be able to construct this customer 360. But the next problem is you need a single place to put this data, because we're talking about a lot of different types of data, and some of it's very high volume data. So how do you solve that problem? How do you bring it into one place? And we would say there's three real requirements here. The first one is it has to be in a single platform. And with something like Snowflake, you can bring all of that semi-structured data and the structured data into a single place because Snowflake supports that natively and right out of the box. You can also support extremely high volume data that's coming off of your website in a single place without it impacting performance. And that's a critical capability for marketers. You also want to be able to support many workloads. So it's not just BI and ad hoc kind of analytics. You want to be able to support the data science teams that want this data to run their models on top of. You want to be able to support the data applications, which may be built upon this data, that can support services like your mobile app or like a customer experience, a customer service application, which needs this data to respond to customers' needs. And the final piece is having adequate scale and performance. So part of what we're talking about here is democratizing access to data to hundreds or thousands of business users in your company. If you do that, of course, on Monday morning, there's a lot of people that need to hit the system. And so you need a platform that can support that many users concurrently without degrading the performance. We also talked about how there's dozens of data sources that you need to ETL into a single place. So you want to have the isolation so that those ETL processes don't end up slowing down the analytics that your company needs to perform. So as you're thinking about your platform, of course, there's a role for Snowflake to play here. And one of the great things about, one of the reasons that people come to Snowflake is typically because they struggle with the cost and complexity of their previous solutions. And they find that they spend so much time managing infrastructure and not enough time actually performing the high value tasks and analyzing data. Whereas with Snowflake, so much of that is performed as a service. I've also talked about two of the other capabilities for Snowflake, that we can support that native JSON capability automatically for you right out of the box. So all of that data can be put into a single place with no need to store it in separate locations. And the second is that because Snowflake is separated storage and compute, you can throw a ton of data at Snowflake without it actually impacting the performance of your queries, because those teams are so strongly separated. And the reason that's true comes back to our architecture. And we think about this in terms of 3 layers of our architecture. And the real magic from Snowflake is that the inner 2 are extremely separated. So that centralized storage layer is actually under the hood. We use the public cloud. And so you can go and buy Snowflake on top of GCP or on AWS or on Azure. And you can buy Snowflake on any one of those. And that means that you have effectively unlimited storage when it comes to storing all of that marketing data in one place. The multi-cluster compute model means that you can spin up resources as you need them to support queries or workloads that you're going to do on top of that data. So for example, that Monday morning example that I talked about, if you need to support hundreds of users coming on board to be able to quickly query all this data, you're able to spin up different warehouses for different teams immediately when you need them and spin them down and pay per second. So you're only paying for what you use. And so this type of isolation means that everyone's getting lightning fast performance. And at the same time, you're able to perform workloads like ETLing data into the system without it impacting each other. The final layer is the cloud services layer, which is the service layer of Snowflake. And so with Snowflake, all of this comes as a service. There's no tuning or indexing or vacuuming. And our cloud services layer provides all those performance optimizations automatically for you. So you don't have to worry about managing infrastructure. You can focus on higher value tasks. So what does this mean for marketing? It means that all of the different workloads that you're performing, from creating a unified customer profile, managing GDPR compliance, doing BI, personalization, building data products on top of this, and sharing data with suppliers and vendors and partners, can all be done on top of a single platform. And that has tremendous benefits for you as a marketer. So the final thing is, we figured out all the data we needed to go get. We figured out a single platform where we can put this all and use it for all of our different marketing workloads. How do we surface this to people? And if there's a few tips about this. What does it mean to achieve self-service analytics? We would say that what this really you should be shooting for is a world where for 80% of the questions that people are asking themselves, they can go find it in a dashboard or easily open up something like Tableau and quickly perform some ad hoc analysis to get the answer to the question that they need. It's totally okay if 20% of the time they're still going to the specialist analysts or data heroes who are helping them with that more complex query or answer that more complex question if that data is slightly more out of reach or requires something that's a little bit more sophisticated. But you really should be shooting for that 80% on the left. To figure out how to do that, you need to set up your requirements and think about the operational reporting that you need. Think about the ad hoc analysis and the required data sets that people need. And we have some tips on that in a second. And think about how to enable analysts to be able to share queries with each other so that they can benefit from the analysis that somebody else has done to try to answer a similar question. The team you need to support this really comes down to that insights and analytics team that manages the 20% requests that come in. They also manage building that self-service analytics. So they make sure that people have access to the governed data sets that they have, and that they're able to set up the dashboards that your team uses to run the operational reports for the executive team and other departments. The roles for this team typically are a marketing analyst, data scientist, maybe a web analyst or a digital media analyst who focuses on a couple of channels. And they have skills around data cleansing and mining, using advanced languages, also using SQL, familiarity with Tableau, and building data visualizations, and ultimately patience. These need to be good partners for the rest of the organization. They need to be able to handle an incoming queue of a lot of requests and be able to think creatively about how you're going to solve for that with limited resources. In terms of what data to make available, these are some practical tips. What data, if you made it available, would actually answer 80% of those questions that come up for ad hoc analytics? We would say there's 4 real data sets that matter. The first one is segmentation, just getting that customer profile data out there, and the key attributes for the customers, and making that available for people in a governed and accessible way. Second is your campaign data, just understanding what worked and what didn't, who responded to it. All of this is critical information. Initiative performance, so understanding what marketing initiatives were actually effective and bringing in data from partners here where it's applicable. And then finally, your digital media data, so you can understand what's the cross-channel impact of your different marketing campaigns. If you wrap all this up, you're probably going to be in a situation where your business users can't answer 80% of the questions that they need. And so you will have achieved that self-service analytics. The final set of tips that we wanted to talk about are how to build urgency. And this really goes back to what we talked about before, that ultimately this ties back to the financial performance of the company and should be seen as a critical part of your team's strategy. And a way to do that is to tie your marketing initiatives back to those drivers of profitability. So figure out how you can show that this marketing initiative is going to drive up revenue, or it's going to increase the average gross margin that you're selling at, or use your promotion dollars much more effectively, or show that you're using SG&A resources more effectively. So how's it going to make sales more effective? How is it going to decrease customer acquisition costs or ease the burden on your support team? So remember to tie your initiative back to real world implications that the CFO is going to care about. As you think about how to work with IT across marketing and IT to prioritize these things, a simple thing to do is to socialize this maturity curve and to evaluate your company against each of these steps and say, how are we doing and where do we want to be in 6 to 12 months? And what's it going to take for us to really get there, so you can understand what areas to focus on. And what we've seen the best teams do is establish a quarterly planning process across marketing and IT, where marketing and IT agree upon the initiatives. What's the gap? What's the solution, the proposed business impact, and the value and the cost of this? because once you're able to quantify that, it's much easier to ask for those IT resources and to make sure that people are focused on the most important things. So the most successful companies establish this tight partnership between marketing and IT. So to recap, we talked about really three things and how we can power marketing analytics. The first was, why does this matter? And why, from a strategic perspective, should this be important to the C-suite at your company? The second was, what's a data strategy for marketing and how can you build one, and what are some pitfalls for you to avoid? And the third one is, how do you build a customer 360 for marketing, and how should you think about Tableau and Snowflake as being potential partners in this? And hopefully you've learned something about Snowflake today and how Snowflake and Tableau together can help you and your marketing team achieve a customer 360 and much better marketing performance today. So thank you again. Thanks very much for your time.